Thank you very much, Prince Moses. So we move on now to our next panel session, which will be on the topic, Accelerating Collaboration and Innovation in the Agri-Food Industry. How do we go from here? This panel will be moderated by Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, and the panel is made up of Chef Elijah Addo, founder of Food for All Africa, and Dr. Patricia Amankwah-Yeboah, Senior Research Scientist, CSIR Crops Research Institute. Joseph, over to you.
Anita, thanks very much. Good morning to yourself. Good morning to the rest of the team. It's nice for us all to have this conversation about the future of food, without which we probably wouldn't be here, and without which there is probably no future for all of us as far as food is concerned. Our conversation this morning, following the very insightful discussions we've had thus far, would focus on accelerating collaboration and innovation in the agri-food industry, and the multi-billion-dollar question we're seeking to answer is, how do we go from here? Just to go ahead and give a quick overview, and then I would have a conversation with my panel members for the next 26 minutes or so. We all know that improved knowledge about healthy and sustainable food products actually do require adequate research between academia and research organizations on one hand, and industry on the other hand. Without adequate research, we will not be able to produce the necessary foods that can help withstand the impact of climate change, as we've been hearing. Without adequate research, we will not know how to improve upon crops appropriately through biofortification processes. Without appropriate research, there is almost zero guarantee that we can produce enough nutritious food to be able to then help the populace, especially with a very growing population. Just to cite a very quick example, in the US, the average yield of corn per hectare is around 11 metric tons per hectare. But then in Ghana, the average yield of corn is around 3 tons per hectare. Why is it that the US farmer is making 11 tons per hectare from his cornfields and the Ghanaian farmer is making less than 25% of that? The reasons are not far-fetched. It includes concerns that we are, for example, not investing enough in agricultural production, particularly when it comes to research. The USA has a GDP of almost 21 trillion US dollars. Ghana's GDP is around 73 billion US dollars, not even up to 100 billion to reach 1 trillion. Meanwhile, the US spends between 2.7% and 3.3% of its GDP on research every year, but Ghana is spending less than 1%. So we are not investing enough in research here in Ghana and across Africa generally. And even when the necessary investment in research is done, there are some barriers which are holding back the transfer of some of these technologies from the research institutions to the industry and even to farmers. So how do we collaborate enough to ensure that the necessary innovations go down the chain in the agri-food sector for the benefit of our entire food systems? Well, two distinguished guests are joining me for this conversation. Dr. Patricia Amankwah-Yeboah is a senior research scientist at the Crop Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. She conducts research into efficient resource use in crop production, as well as irrigational facilities development, and also water management. And that's a bit of work as well when it comes to hydroponics and aeroponics, as well as agricultural mechanization. Thanks very much for joining us, Dr. Amankwah-Yeboah.
Thank you very much, Joseph. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, thank you once again. Let me quickly introduce our second guest for this conversation. Chef Elijah Addo is the founder and executive director of Food for All Africa. Food for All Africa is a social enterprise which operates in the West African neighborhood, particularly Ghana. Chef Addo's organization has two core missions: to reduce hunger and also to eliminate food waste. And Food for All Africa has distributed more than 3 million meals across the sub-region since 2015, and they continue to do a lot of work in that particular space. Chef Addo, many thanks for joining us this morning too.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Good morning to all attendees.
Good morning. And so let me begin with you, Dr. Amankwaya-Boa. Can you say a little more about why you do, why your organization does, and the kinds of innovations that you are working on that could really make much more difference in terms of helping improve upon the food systems? Over the next 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. The CSIR is the first most research organization in the country. We have about 13 research institutions, and the Crop Research Institute, where I work, is the only one of those institutions. It can be found in the whole of the country. We can be seen in almost all the regions with some of our outstations and some of the head offices of the various institutions situated across the country. To talk a bit about the crop research where I do work, we do a lot of research into crops, innovation surrounding the production. We go further to do a bit of the agro-processing, that is the food aspect. Before the production, we are also engaging extension, building capacities of the extension and our farmers, as well as even some other stakeholders along the chain. So extensively, that is about what we do, the general things that we do. The other institutes, for instance, if you talk about the Institute of Industrial Research, they are into the mechanization aspect of agriculture, other technologies that relates to the development of the country. Currently, I know they are working on energy and other industries across the globe. You talk about the Soil Research Institute, you have the Science Policy Research Institutes and the Water Research Institute, just to mention a few of these institutions. Let me come back to the crop research where I work, and then in relation to what we do when it comes to agriculture. I think we are well known for breeding high-yielding crops. We talked about the yield gap between crop production in Africa and the advanced countries. What we are trying to do is to bridge this gap by improving on the materials that we have. We are using biotechnology, we are using marker-assisted selection in improving on some of our materials. So you see us releasing new crop varieties to meet the challenges that we have been facing. Apart from these varieties to meet the challenges, for instance, we have the drought-tolerant crops. You know, water is an issue with production. Bread and pastry, all of these other food. Now, what are we doing to better the original sweet potato that we have? You know, sweet potato has a lot of moisture. So if you want to breed for industry, you either have to reduce the moisture content such that you get a lot of flour and not so much moisture. So we are trying to improve the flour content of these materials. For instance, that includes yam and cassava, you know, our very own cassava. So we are improving this for industry as well as for food consumption. Now you come to the health aspect, and we are improving the micronutrient contents of our food. Some few years ago, you could see a lot of malnutrition issues. Currently, I don't think we are facing that, and we should be patted on the back because we are doing a lot of work in that regard. We are improving the crops. We are adding up some micronutrients. For instance, we have the vitamin A maize, vitamin A infused sweet potato. We have some crops that also have some higher versions of zinc and proteins compared to the unimproved varieties that you can see on the market. So we are doing a lot with regards to these areas. When it comes to the production aspect, we are improving the production and reducing the production cost such that should the farmer go in to put, for instance, 100 cedis, you know that for sure at the end of the day, you are going to get your returns and get some profit on that. So we are working on the socioeconomics aspect as well. We don't just go in to bring out these improved varieties. We are talking to industry. We are talking to stakeholders to to be able to come up with what exactly does the populace need. What is the issues that we are trying to solve? For instance, I've talked about the industry aspect. Is it improved varieties that is good for industrial purposes? Is it an improved variety that is good for food? Is it an improved variety that can be used for food and even for fodder? Because we do have that. When you come to cowpea, we have several varieties that can be used to feed animals. So at the end of the day, you harvest your grains from the cowpea, and then you also have the fodder that is still rich and green to be able to push it to feed your animals. So in general, I should say that we are almost found all over the value chain, from production to consumption. So you can find us there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amankwah-Yeboah. A very interesting overview of all the great work you're doing at the CSIR. Questions still remain about how come some of these innovations are probably not getting to farmers, which I would ask a little later. But before I get onto those, let's hear quickly from Chef Elijah Addo, who runs the Food for All Africa organization. Chef Addo, can you say a bit more about what your organization does and how much difference you are seeking to make as far as improving the availability of food to the general populace is concerned? Go ahead and unmute and then make the point. You're still muted.
All right. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity. So I happen to run Food for Africa. Food for operates West Africa's first and largest food support center in Ghana. Since 2015, we work with communities and stakeholders in ensuring that we create sustainable means of nutrition for vulnerable communities. We run programs such as lunchbox feeding program, where we set up school kitchens for schools that are currently not under government schools, school feeding, and then we provide them with ingredients for a period of time. We work with the school PT, the circuit supervisors to recruit some of the mothers to actually become caterers by providing training as well, so that they are able to provide a meal for the children whilst they are at school. We also do have a food box and food bags program where we provide on a monthly basis food bags or box to vulnerable, incapable of working people across the country. And we do this through the social welfare officers as well as beneficiaries of the program. Then as well, we do a hot meals program where we go about providing hot meals for
Okay, looks like we're having a bit of a technical
those who are homeless and all. In a nutshell, that's what we do for Africa. But to touch a little bit on the topic of discussion, ensuring inclusive innovation actually can transform.
Okay. Chef Elijah Addo's line is giving us a bit of
food systems. So, sorry, 2 years ago we had COVID-19 pandemic, and then now we are faced with the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And these two global events has disrupted our global food systems. We have our president talking about the effect of the Russia-Ukraine war on the food system in Ghana, and people are debating as to whether it is true that this war has actually affected our food system, which indeed is true to a very large extent. And when you come down to the places where food is produced at the community level, you see clear effects of COVID-19 and then the invasion of Ukraine on our food systems. Recently, the World Economic Forum and then FAO published a roadmap to help countries accelerate inclusive food system innovation. And the report brought to the fore that we have a $15.2 billion funding gap for food system innovation that could support in ending hunger and keeping emissions at 2 degrees and reducing water use by 10%. And the roadmap also talks about establishing a global coalition for digital food system innovation, a network of food innovation apps across the world, which will help farmers invest in sustainable food practices through the 100 million farmers platform, as well as also bridging partnership between the producers of food and then those who work with food. I'm talking about the hospitality and tourism sector. And these are all ways to bridge innovation in our agri-food system.
But Elijah, is the challenge just about money? Is there something that you would have wished that the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, for example, which is the lead research organization in Ghana, was doing a bit differently to make your work easier in terms of getting food from the farm to the plates of ordinary people?
Well, it goes far beyond money. It's more, for me, where I sit, I see it's more of bridging the gap between the various stakeholders, key stakeholders within the food supply chain. We're talking about practical example, a farmer in Yeji should be able to have access easily to, let's say, a hotel or a chef in Accra in order to be able to market or sell his product. That is one way. And then as well, CSIR has been doing an amazing work over the years. However, with the level of challenges that we have faced and then the rate at which innovation is getting to, it's quite important to bring stakeholders like the end users, the hospitality sector definitely play a very critical role in ensuring that what is produced by the local farmer can be eaten at a larger scale. We have today the problem of how to transform, for instance, yam into meals that can easily be served at top-notch restaurants and eateries. People complain in our homes that children today are more attuned towards the foreign food rather than the local one. And then you ask yourself, why is this so? Possibly there has to be something that needs to be done in ensuring that it becomes appetizing, it becomes, we will cherish it. And I believe that collaboration can be done closely together with players in the hospitality sector, the traditional caterers association and all that. So it's more about network, bringing the key stakeholders together and then looking at the scale of the challenge and then working together.
Thanks very much. Very insightful comments there, Chef Elijah Ado. I will go back to Dr. Patricia Amankwah-Yeboah. Dr. Amankwah-Yeboah, beyond doing your own great work at the Crop Research Institute in terms of improving upon crops and all, are there specific steps you are taking to ensure that the kind of materials you are churning out is actually aimed at meeting the needs of industries, aimed at meeting the needs of farmers, and that the crops you are working on and the traits you are introducing are actually solving real challenges that everyday people face? Because then there's that bigger concern that sometimes a lot of your work is donor funded, and because he who pays the piper calls the tune, then you are more focused on meeting their expectations than the needs of ordinary people.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Let me start with your last remarks, that a lot of our work is funded by the external donors. For sure, yes, that is what is happening. But let's not lose focus of the fact that when they are funding, it's for us. All the products, everything that comes out is supposed to be for the benefit of the country. They don't fund for us to improve cassava varieties for use in Europe or anywhere else. They do fund for us to improve and use in our country. And in so doing, they are also opening the doors for us for the global market. So if they are funding for us to improve the local production, it's also opening the door for us to meet challenges, emerging challenges of the on the global market. So there is a bit of misconception that he who pays, excuse me, they are not. We are not dancing to their tune. We are also dancing to the tune of the people of Ghana. Again, let me come back to what your previous question. Now, in doing our research, we have a lot of partners. Now, research has moved from the position where it was the top-down approach. A scientist will sit in his or her office and try to develop something and take it out. No, we don't do research in that manner again. Now we have gone to the level where we are co-designing and co-implementing our research. So with the co-designing stage, we are bringing together all stakeholders. If it's to meet a specific trait, for instance, a consumer preferred trait, then we are talking about bringing in industry, bringing in consumers, bringing in farmers, a whole lot of people along this chain to form the core of the stakeholders. Then we are going to take these, we do a lot of studies before we come up with whatever has to come. That is the short of what I'm trying to say. So we are not sitting in the office anymore to churn out ideas and do research. No, the world wouldn't even fund us if that is the case, because we have moved far above that. Nobody will give you money for your ideas that wouldn't benefit some other person. So we have gone far above that, and we are now doing the co-design, and we are working in multidisciplinary team. For example, if you come to where I work, I don't sit and develop a technology on my own. Even if the technology is supposed to be, for instance, an irrigation technology where I am an expert, I cannot at the end of the day say that I am the one that developed the technology. We are developing this technology in teams. You would have an agronomist on the technology, you will have a social scientist on the technology, you will have a mechanization expert, you have even a crop health specialist on the team. So you don't just develop anything at all and then come out to say that this is a technology that you have developed. So for sure, once it is co-designed, there is also the co-ownership. So turning out these technologies is going to be owned by the stakeholders that were involved in bringing out this technology. So you don't leave it along the way. If you had asked me to develop a canning base for you, for your industry, you don't at the end of the day push me to develop and not pick up this technology. So you are going to sponsor and be part of the process so that at the end of the day, you own it and you are able to pick it up. So that is where the partnership comes into play. Without the partnership, you will develop and nothing happens. Then, in some times past, now it's becoming better, but in some times past, they will say that we are leaving our research on the shelves. And that was the case because it was the top-down approach. There wasn't any consultation, there wasn't so much partnerships. So who were you developing that research for? Now you have a clientele that you are developing this research for. It could be the farmer, but we want to be moving away from the focus on the farmer to the industry. And that is where we are now. Now we are focusing on the industries, we are moving there and we are engaging the industries. Myself personally, I've been visiting some agro-processing sites. I have even gone to some composting sites where we feel that we can be using some of their products to support production. And then at the end of the day, production will also go in to feed these agro-processing industries. So, Joseph, let me just say that we are moving from those old time research into the emerging system where we don't sit in our office to develop anything, but we are working in a very wide arena of partnerships.
Many thanks, Dr. Patricia Amankwaya-Boah. Very insightful details there. Unfortunately, just when the conversation is getting exciting, then we tend to run out of time. So I'll take that as your very final word. I would move on quickly to Chef Elijah Ado. In concluding, what would you say are the things that should be done differently, Elijah, particularly when it comes to the kind of support that's needed from major stakeholders, particularly government, in helping scale up some of these ideas and ensure that the collaborations work more effectively? What's your expectation of government in that particular regard, Elijah?
Thank you very much. I think Madam has spoken, Madam Patricia has spoken wide on that, and I believe to add up to it, it needs to actually collaborations and partnerships needs to go down to the grassroots so that all can participate and then ensure that we are able to build a strong food system.
Many thanks, Chef Elijah Ado of Food for All Africa, Dr. Patricia Amankwaya-Boah, who is a senior research scientist at the CSIR Crop Research Institute, also joined us for this conversation. I've learned a lot. I'm excited to learn that we are moving away as a people and as research institutions from the top-down kind of approach when it comes to research to a bottom-up kind of approach when it comes to research. And I think that's probably what the future holds in terms of ensuring more adequate impact of some of these works that we do. And so many thanks to all of you for joining us for this conversation. Anita, back to you.